Do you run the best list out there, the top meta, and you still lose? Well, chances are it's probably not your fault. The reality is there is a concept in this game that people just don't quite grasp, and that is play style matters. So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to break down what play style means, and we're going to get you suited to a list that works for you. Not everyone can play the same darn list, even if it's the best list. There are best lists out there that I suck with, trust me. So why do some lists not work for me or not work for you? If this is a question you're asking yourself, this video is for you, because there's lots and lots of incredible lists in Warhammer 40,000, and there's just tons of different ways to play this game. But not every list is going to be working for every single player in the game. Some people claim that there's only one correct way to play, and this is typically going to be your Math Hammer maxis. People who think that averages always happen, and by the way, I do Math Hammer. I'm not like shitting on the concept of mathing out what should happen with dice. I think it is a valuable skill. But a lot of times people will try to boil Warhammer down to an algorithm of this is the correct play, you should always do this, and if you follow these correct steps, then you're going to win. And I just do not share that view. I think that is a very wrong view. I don't think there's any theoretical correct way to play Warhammer 40,000. You can take two different players with the exact same list who get completely different results, and they can both be equally skilled players. There are some people who can take, say, one random orcs list, and they can crush Death Guard with it. But the other player who's taken that orcs list will never beat Death Guard with it. And it happens to be generally a matter of play style. So some games could just be won simply because one player is more comfortable taking risk than the other player. Some games are completely lost because one player happens to be more comfortable with risk-taking than the other player. So basically what I'm trying to say here is player style will dictate what armies you are best with. And I'm going to talk about the style of armies in the game and how you can identify what style of army you're going to jive with the best. So here's the deal, guys. We have three primary archetypes of armies in the game. We have kill you, die armies. And these are armies where it's like, hey, listen, I'm going to full send, I'm going to table you, and since I tabled you and you have no models left, you can't score. So I don't really care about my positioning, I don't care about my point scoring, you can't score anything because you don't have anyone left alive on the table. That is a very valid way of building armies. And there are subcategories of the kill you die. Some people do this with shooting, some people do this with melee, whatever. But that is the style of army. Then you've got the second style of army, which I refer to lovingly as the na boo boo, you can't catch me. And that is my very mature way of saying armies that like to throw the ball laterally, right? This is the style of army. We'll get into what style of army that is, but some armies they don't care about interacting with you. That's the style of army. And then lastly, we have the deal with it army. This is going to be something like the stat check army. Can you handle what I'm putting on the table? And if you can't, well, it's going to be a problem. So basically, what it comes down to is these are three fundamental style archetypes of list building. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you examples of players who play like this, and I'm going to give you what questions these style armies are asking and whether you can answer it. So we're going to identify exactly which style army you're going to want to play yourself. Because in all reality, certain players are supremely skilled at very different playstyles. There is a playstyle in here that I am terrible with, and I'll identify that for you so that maybe that'll help you identify what you're going to be really good or terrible with. So, me. Guys, I am a kill you, die type player. I am a very aggressive player. My lists are almost always built just to cause massive damage and cripple my opponent. I play Blood Angels, I play Orcs, I play World Eaters, I play all these high pressure melee style armies. Even when I do play armies with shooting, I still play them as if they were melee pressure armies. So that is what I do. I always, when I play this game, I try to overwhelm and force my opponent to make bad decisions. I don't want my opponent to have a good decision to make. I want to put so much pressure on him, they have to choose between two different bad decisions in their playstyle. So this is how I play the game. And there's a lot of players who play this way. Other notable players who play like this, Anthony Vanilla. You've got lots of high pressure melee players out there. Josh Cowland, he's a member of the Happy Crumping Discord community. He just won his third GT with Orcs in like 3 months or something like that. The guy's on a freaking tear with them. He is a very similar style player to me. He's gonna go out there and he is going to beat face. And that is what we do. Basically, everything in my armies are going to be either I'm going to kill my opponent or I'm going to stop my opponent from killing me. Those are really the only two questions my army is really answering, right? When I play this army, or when you play this army, or when anyone plays this style army, the question the army is asking of its opponent is very simple. Can you survive me? If your opponent can answer the question and say, yes, I can survive you, a lot of times this style army will struggle. Now, I will say that this style army tends to get better results with players who are willing to accept a certain amount of risk. If you're not willing to take a certain amount of risk, sometimes these armies are just a really bad option for you. So, just to give you an example, I am very comfortable losing a game every now and then simply because I have to lay it all on the line and I'm going to make this 8-inch charge or this 9-inch charge or I won't. If I make it, I'm going to win. If I lose it, I'm going to lose. I'm comfortable with that decision. Lots of people are not comfortable with that decision. And that doesn't mean that they cannot play this style army, but it does mean that they're not going to be going for the riskier plays that someone like myself might be very, very cozy going for. I'll give you a great illumination of this. So I won a major last year against I was in the finals. I was playing against my buddy Victor, who has also been a guest on the channel. He's an amazing player. And I am running the Sons of Sanguinius. So this was before the Blood Angels got their codex. And he was running Crusher Stampede Tyranids. And because of the table that we were on, we knew that basically whoever went first was going to have an insane advantage. Because if I went first, then he was not really going to get into the angles that he needed to be able to get to shoot me. But if he went first, he was going to claim all the angles, and then there's going to be nowhere for me to be able to stage on the map. So Victor got the first, and he covered all of the firing lanes with Excrins and Tyrannofexes and all these things, which basically meant that anywhere I moved, I was going to get picked to pieces. So I had a decision to make. And it was a very simple decision. It was I could hang back, I could play intelligently, I could play smart, and in all reality, at the end of the game, I would end up losing by 5 to 10 points simply because I could never move out. Or I could nut up and I could actually throw myself onto the table and I could say, hey, listen, I'm going to put everything out in the open and I'm going to go for a 9-inch charge, 10-inch charge, 9-inch charge. And if I fail those charges, I'm going to lose in turn 1 instead of losing in turn 5. But if I make those charges, now I've got a fighting chance. So I'm the style player where I'm very comfortable with that decision. So what do? I take my entire army, I just completely move it out, and I go, cool, I'm going to make these charges or I'm going to fail these charges. Now, this is a full send style that I don't recommend people do unless you kind of have to. So because I understood the board state, I was of the understanding that I was going to lose the game if basically no matter what, unless I happened to get lucky and make these charges. So I risked it. And when I risked it, it happened to pay off. I made the charges I needed to make. I ended up winning the game, and I won the major. It was very, very exciting. It was very, very cool. Some people are not comfortable losing a game simply because they fail an 8-inch charge, though, or a 9-inch charge. If that is not you, you might want to think about if this style army is for you. It very well could still be for you because there's ways to mitigate those risk factors that you need to take. But it's just something to consider, okay? Now, I've got plenty of clients who really suck with my style of army list. And so when we're going through list building or we're prepping them for different tournaments, I have to prep them very differently than I would prep myself. So we build lists specifically for them, and we build game plans specifically for them. And it is not this game plan. All right, let's talk about the next style army. And this is the na boo boo, you can't catch me style player. And Nick Nanavati from The Art of War, shout out to him, super great guy. He is a perfect example of this style player. You run Eldar, you run Grey Knights, Hypercrypt, even GSC. These are styles of armies that they're really not particularly interested in interacting with your opponent. This can be indirect style armies that just pound you with indirect fire, and they're jumping around, they're scoring their points. They don't ever want to get shots. They don't even care if they ever shoot you, if they can score the points, if they can move block you in positions where you can't get into places. They just basically don't want to play the same game as you. There's nothing wrong with this, but I personally find it a very frustrating way of playing the game. But they are going to be scoring their points. They never have to exchange firepower, and they're super happy. I personally hate this style of play. Now, I've got clients who love this style of play, and we have to build their ability to run this army. Now, if you are a person who does not have great discipline, this might be a style of army that will be very, very challenging for you to play. So you might see the latest hotness army that is running around and it's crushing everyone. You're like, how does that army ever win? I played it and I just lose every single time I play. Well, a lot of times that might just be because you're the style of player who you want to send that unit out to go kill your opponent. But the second you do, that can collapse your entire game plan, right? So this style army tends to require lots of discipline and understanding that you don't really have to kill your opponent in order to win the game. So if that's you, this style of army might really be for you. And this tends to work really well for the people who do not enjoy the I'm going to kill you, die, die, die style army. And then lastly, we've got one other style. This is called the deal with it army. This is going to be your classic stat check. So like Matt Laura kind of brought this to LVO, I think it was last year, where he was doing the triple Satan and the double monolith. It's like, can you deal with the pressure I'm putting out? Can you kill me? That was the question that army was asking. And, well, people really, the answer was no. They weren't prepared for it. They couldn't handle it. And that ended up winning the LVO that year. So this style army can either be too tough to kill. So just stat checky, think, Deathwing Knight spam, Satan spam, Assimilation spam, even Green Tide spam. It doesn't have to be super powerful, tough individual models. It can be just 120 Orc boys with a 5 of invulnerable save. That is a very stat checky army where you're asking your opponent, can you actually chew through these models? Or it can also just be like a jail style list, for example. Think Admech or Thunderwolf spam in Stormlance, where just turn 1, they're going to go 19 inches and they're going to charge you and they're going to ask you the question, can you break me? Can you actually kill my models and break out of the jail I've put you in? So it can just be huge stat check armies. It can be jail style armies, whatever. It can also be style armies that are just guaranteed to get a certain amount of points. But one of the things that you have to understand when you're playing this style army is that occasionally you're just going to roll bad. Or occasionally your opponent's going to roll hot. And the critical unit in your army is just going to die way too soon. So let's say you're playing, I don't know, quadruple, like 4 Satans. You just have to accept that occasionally you're going to play a game where you lose 2 Satan in a turn. And if that happens, you need to know, do you have the mental fortitude to try to squeeze that game out? Or are you going to check out being like, cool, my critical flanks are just done. It's impossible for me to hold because I just lost over 500 points of my army that I had to have. If you are not willing to be able to try to push through that disastrous turn on those critical models, this probably is not the style of army for you. That being said, there's a lot of players who are willing to do things like that, and there's a lot of players who can work around losing models like that. And they're going to really enjoy this style of army. Now, when I'm going through these 3 archetypes of armies, yes, there's lots of subcategories of them. I'm sure there's going to be lots of people posting in the comments, and I hope you do, talking about subcategories, different styles of army. I think it's great, but they all generally will fit into one of these 3 primary archetypes. Out of these 3 primary archetypes, I am generally a kill you, die, die, die player, but I'm also very comfortable with the deal with it style of list. I do find it less rewarding and less fun to play, and I tend to suck. Even when I play amazing list, I will go to a tournament and I could go 2-3, maybe 3-2 with even the best army in the game if it is this style army of the na-na-na-boo-boo. Whereas other players will just go undefeated with these, but the second they take like World Eaters, they just get crushed, right? So basically what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to expose you to the concept that just because you are bad with a list doesn't mean the list is bad. Or just because you are great with a list doesn't necessarily mean that a list is great. So this all spawned because in my Discord, someone was asking a question about a very recent list that happened, that came out. It was a Stormlance list piloted by John Lennon, and it just didn't seem to have any damage. And they asked, how the heck can this army play when it doesn't really deal any damage? Well, the thing is that the army wasn't made to table its opponent. It had just enough damage to deal with critical pieces, but it was never going to be tabling its opponents, and that was okay. It was a good list, but would have been a very bad list for someone like me, for example, or for some like the person who's asking the question. So just when you start looking at some of these armies and you're wondering how are they doing so well, a lot of the times it's not the army, it's how you personally would be piloting the army that is confusing you. So what I recommend is just to identify how you like playing the game, what you're comfortable with, and lean more into those style armies, and you're going to find you're going to have a lot more success. So with that, I hope this finds you well and alive and excited, and I'm going to sign off today, and I hope you go have a magical day where you're going to go crump your opponents. All right, bye-bye.